This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
Welcome to Beyond the Arc, here with Tate Frazier to discuss what was a pretty eventful night of NBA games, Tate. We saw the Knicks and the Heat. New York extended that series. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And the Warriors heading back to San Francisco. They beat the Lakers 121-106 in Game 5, extend to a Game 6. Steph's got 27. Wiggins has 25. A great defensive performance. Wiggins on LeBron playing great defense all night. Peyton bottling up D'Lo.
Right.
And Lonnie Walker, the hero of Game 4. What was the driving factor in your eyes of this victory for the Warriors?
I think you said it. I mean, Andrew Wiggins, right? I mean, Wiggins was the star that was not the main star of last year's run, right? We all talked about Stephen Curry. He wins his finals MVP, right? Something that was elusive in his career that he needed. But Andrew Wiggins was the talking point. I mean, he was incredible against Tatum. Tatum last year was a top 5 player by most accounts, right? And Wiggins goes head-to-head with him. And then this year, he's not with the team for the majority of the year. He comes back for the playoffs. There's questions. What's he going to be like? This felt like the Andrew Wiggins we saw last year was in this game. Felt like he was connected. Felt like it was the version of him that you would like to see as a Warriors fan. And, you know, I saw the stat at the end of this game. Steph Curry leads the playoffs in fourth quarter points by a mile, right? 109 fourth quarter points. The next closest, I think, was 69 fourth quarter points. So all he really needed was a number 2. We saw Klay Thompson in Game 2 step up, but Wiggins did tonight, and that was the difference in the game, really.
I mean, you say Wiggins needs a number 2, right? Like for the Lakers, the story of their playoffs so far has been X Factor stepping up throughout, and then AD, you know, he's the number 2 to LeBron, but he's been the number 1, right?
He's really number 1, yeah.
And yet tonight, in the second half, he gets hit in the head. He's doozy, and he walks off the sideline. And then we see a report from Chris Haynes that he had to be escorted out on a wheelchair with a head injury for further evaluation. That was shortly after LeBron landed awkwardly, was walking a bit gingerly with a foot injury or an ankle injury. You know, Lakers going back to L.A. for Game 6 on Friday. And yet now we have these reports about AD, the best number 2, the true number 1 in the playoffs right now with Anthony Davis. He might actually be out, and that's bad news for LA.
And SVG called it in the moment. He's like, if he goes into concussion protocol, which we hope he is not dealing with the concussion, and obviously this game just happened, but if he goes into protocol and happens to miss Friday, then the one surefire game that you're saying, okay, we're up 3-1, we go to the Bay, that's going to be a tough one, but maybe we can steal it. But if we don't, we come home and we close this series out. If you're an LA fan, that's your thought process. But you lose your 1A option in Anthony Davis. What does that look like? Can Lonnie Walker save the day again? He obviously did in Game 4, the 15-point performance. He even went down gingerly. The good news is LeBron had a nice putback dunk late in that game that kind of showed, hey, LeBron's going to be all right, right? I mean, he's kind of shown us that is his superhero trait, right? He is durable. Durability is his best ability at times. Anthony Davis is the question. He is always the question with this team. And when he plays like the 1A, they're one of, if not the best team in the NBA. But without him, it's a real big question mark.
I mean, they've been an absolute dominant force anytime he's on the floor. The issue
Yeah.
is when he's not on the floor, they have a minus 10.3 net rating. Like, their defense completely falls apart. And even in this game, there were situations when he was on the floor and they had switched him on to Stephen Curry. Like, when they did that, they have no backline defense, and it felt like Steph or anybody on the Warriors was just attacking the basket because AD was pulled out. So the Warriors have, 2 games in a row now, attacked AD, tried to bring him outside of the paint. So it's hurting them when he's on the floor a little bit. And then tonight, if he's off the floor, you just have absolutely no hope at all. And I think if the Lakers are without Anthony Davis in Game 6, there's like a really strong chance that we're heading back for a Game 7 in San Francisco on Sunday. I fail to see how the Lakers could win without him.
I mean, let's just say this. If it does happen where we get a Game 7 on Mother's Day, we go back to the Bay. I mean, the conversations about the legacies and the Mount Rushmores and the Pantheon, whatever kind of pyramids that you're creating of basketball excellence, right? Curry and LeBron will be a conversation, and that Game 7 will be almost like a weird deja vu to 2016, right? Where it was a 3-1 series. They go to the Bay. We get Game 7. And who knows? Maybe Curry can try to get rid of those demons from the past. We'll see.
I mean, those demons being the fact that the Warriors blew a 3-1 lead to LeBron and his Cavs in the NBA Finals.
Not the NBA Finals,
yes,
but it still would be a very significant series.
I mean, in many ways, this feels like the Finals with the amount of adjustments we've seen every single game, like even in this series. And last game, the Lakers put Anthony Davis on Wiggins, and then suddenly they stopped having – Gary Payton was previously the guy screening for Stephen Curry because AD was defending him. In that game, they stopped having Wiggins screen for Steph. In this game, they figured out, okay, we're going to have Wiggins screen for Curry in that second half to pull AD out.
Right.
And they figured that out. And at this point for the Lakers, if they are without AD or even have a limited AD, they need to have some of those other X factors step up. Tonight for the Warriors, Kevon Looney played 20 minutes. Awesome off the bench, attacking the glass like we saw in the last round against
Great
the
on
Kings.
The offensive boards.
I mean, he's unbelievable on that in that area. And it felt like the Warriors got more of that X factor help than the Lakers tonight. They didn't get a big performance from a D'Lo or a Rui. Schroeder had 14 points, but nobody really popped like we've seen throughout the entire playoffs from them. And if with a limited AD or no AD, like they need that from LeBron and multiple others. And I think for the Lakers here, that's what you're going to be banking on.
Yeah, and D'Lo, we saw in Game 3, he opened up with 3 straight threes, right? I mean, it was just like, okay, well, this guy came to play, and they were doubling AD to open that game. And when he hit those shots, it kind of opened up everything for the Lakers. I think Schroeder is the one that I kind of point to, and it's not his offense, it's his defense.
Oh, yeah.
I think what he's done to Steph Curry, picking him up full court, he's kind of wreaked some havoc in that sense, and he's an agitator, right? That is the best way to describe Schroeder in this series, and I think he's going to be a factor at home.
Tate, are we getting a Game 7?
I think so. I mean, why not if you're the NBA? Why not? I mean, this is great television. I don't know what the ratings are, KOC, but they got to be high because I'm locked in. And like you said, we're watching all these matchups. We're watching all this coaching, all these, kind of like sleight of hands, all this leaked information. We saw Steve Kerr was upset about Shams getting the starting lineup. Like, I love the gamesmanship that's going on in this series. I need 7. Give me 7.
A great scoop there by FanDuel's Shams
shout out to
Charania.
Shams, yeah.
This has definitely been the best series. So we'll be back after the break talking about some of the others. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc, Tate. We saw another game on Wednesday night with the Knicks holding home court. They beat the Heat. Now they're going to be going to Miami for Game 6 with a 112-103 win. Jalen Brunson, outstanding, 38 points, 12 of 22, 10 made free throws, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, only 1 turnover in 48 minutes. Classic Tom Thibodeau. He played Brunson and Quentin Grimes for all 48 minutes in the game. First time that happened, they said this on the broadcast, since Walt Frazier and Jerry Lucas both played 48 minutes back in 1972. Brunson was unbelievable, man. I think there's not a lot of adjustments in this one, but the big one was just riding your best players for 48 minutes. What did you think?
Which is the Tom Thibodeau strategy, right? I mean, this is what Tibbs does. I was happy for Brunson because, we remember a couple years ago, 2021, Derrick Rose, they won one game, in that series against the Hawks, but boy, was it a magical game, right? I mean, D Rose had 27 points, and it felt like, man, if the Magic could just, if the MSG could get the magic of that moment again, then we're really cooking with the Knicks. I think Brunson kind of delivered. He wasn't going to lose in front of the home crowd there in MSG. Did all he could to help them win this game. Yeah. I really liked Grimes' defense. At one point in this game, he kind of banged knees on a screen, and then Jimmy Butler, shot clock's going down, but then he still swipes and gets a steal despite having that injury.
Oh, that was what a play that
right?
was.
And also a very Tibbs play, right? Where Tibbs, that warmed his heart, right? And
it
especially
was like 47 minutes in or something like that.
Of course. And obviously, he hobbles up the court after that. So I thought Brunson and Grimes were great in this game. I thought Robinson was great on the boards. And just in general, it was nice to see the Knicks kind of handle their business, right? You're supposed to win this game by all intents and purposes, and they got it done.
And I felt like in this game, the Knicks, they had a lead pretty much throughout a lot of portions of the game. The Heat were punching back, though. I mean, they had Duncan Robinson going off from three.
Shout out to Duncan Robinson, hitting some big shots in MSG.
After riding the bench, for most of the season, doing a lot of podcasting, but now he's finally back on the court and producing. And I feel like he's better as a ball handler. He's improved. It's as if maybe getting those minutes taken away has allowed him that time to say, okay, well, what can I do to re-earn those minutes? So good for him doing that. And Jimmy Butler did more Jimmy Butler things throughout the game. So now they're heading back to Miami, and Miami's got a chance to close this out to head to the Eastern Conference Finals. These are two tough, gritty teams, very similar in that sense. Knicks need to win, 3 in a row, now 2 more. What's your faith level in the Knicks to extend this to a 7?
Well, like you said, they're very tough teams, and Tibbs is a very tough coach. I don't think it's going to be easy for Miami, but going back down to South Beach and, getting in that building, getting the environment on their side, I just think that Miami's the better team. I really do. I think they have the better coach. I think they have the better star. I wish Randall was more clicked in than he seemingly is at the moment. He had some moments in this game, obviously, but Brunson is really the star. He's really the one that's kind of carrying the flag for this Knicks team. And in general, I think Jimmy Butler will handle business. He knows what he's doing. He's kind of forecasting for the future. And if you ask, Spoelstra, Pat Riley, anybody that's in the Miami Heat culture chamber that they have there, where they get everybody ready for games, I think they're fired up for the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think it starts after Game 6.
I'm picking the Knicks to extend to 7. Let's go. Let's go.
I like where your head's at. Let's just go to 7 games.
Let's go.
Who cares?
Let's make it happen, Adam Silver. Let's go.
I know what our boy Stern would do. We need 7.
I'm not as sure, though, in the Sixers-Celtics series. On Tuesday night, Bill Simmons hits me up saying, let's pod tonight.
Those are the best texts to get.
Yes, they are, especially because the Celtics were playing that night.
Right.
Unfortunately for Bill, it ended up being a very dark podcast because the Sixers went up 3-2 in the series with another win on the road. Been a disappointment series for Boston with some of the games that they have dropped. I mean, Philadelphia has been outstanding. Harden stepping up on offense as a scorer and playmaker. Embiid looking healthy. PJ Tucker doing the stuff he's done for years with Milwaukee and Houston and Miami. At this point in the series, if you look at the FanDuel Sportsbook odds right now, the Sixers are currently the favorites in the Eastern Conference. Do you agree with that, Tate? Up 3-2 right now. Are they the favorites in the East?
I have a hard time trusting the Sixers to do, like I mentioned, the Knicks tonight, they handled business. This is what you're supposed to do at home. I still have a weird in the back of my mind. Are we sure we can trust the Sixers to do what they're supposed to do? I worry about that. I've seen Doc Rivers with 3-1 leads at times, and
blown a lot of them.
Well, it's not to point out. Look, I mean, they're Magic. I mean, they're going up against a good team. There's always the actual circumstances at play.
But he's blown 3-3-1 leads, 3-3-2 leads, 6 total if you want to include the 3-1.
And there's nuance to all those issues, but it still comes down to the fact where I've seen this, movie play out before. And the Boston Celtics 2 days prior, they were the favorite to win the NBA championship. So obviously the odds shifted a bunch.
Things change a bunch very quickly.
Right, very quickly. And Harden, the playmaking, the fact that this guy is basically a guaranteed 10 assists, it feels like going into these games, that's impressive. Maxey showed that he is the Maxey that we have seen in the regular season in this past game, scoring 30 on the road. Thought that was impressive. So I want to buy into the Sixers, but for some reason, KOC, and hopefully Doc proves me wrong, but I still feel like Boston could win this game.
I think Boston still get a shot as well, but Philly's figured some things out.
Yeah.
I think with Boston, it's going to come down a lot to what adjustments does Mazzulla make. of which he has not made many in the series. But also, you can't just put this on the coach. The players need to perform better too. And I'd look at Jason Tatum, in the series, his numbers on the surface, averaging 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. It's not like he's, stinking out there. But I feel like there's still another level for Tatum to reach as a scorer. He's shooting only 30.6% from three in the postseason. And I have a stat for you here, Tate. This is whole season numbers here. Tatum on pull-up three-pointers according to Second Spectrum. In 2020, 39.6% on pull-up threes. In 2021, 36.7%. In 22, 33.7%. This season, 29.6%. The skill that helped elevate him into, this guy's going to be a megastar, has declined in each of the last 4 seasons. And I think that's manifesting here in the postseason, where that shot is just not what's making him an elite efficiency, high-volume scorer that the true best players in the postseason are. And I think that's where Tatum has to figure out that perimeter game in ways that he just feels like he's lost it.
Yeah, and when I watch Tatum, I appreciate the amount of strength that he has put on. I think he's gotten his body in a position to physically handle the wear and tear of not only an 82-game season, but the 16 games that would be ahead that you need to win to go win an NBA championship.
Still a very high-level player, despite this criticism.
I like what he's done physically, but I worry, like you said, when you're trending downward at that type of level, is that impacting that? Is it impacting your shot? Is it impacting some of the skill, right? So you're building up the force, but is it impacting the skill? I don't know if that's one-to-one, but in general, that would be like the first place my mind goes. And, you asked about this series. The best player in this series is obviously the MVP in Embiid. And I think if you just go for the layman approach to this, you say, well, the Sixers had the best player. They might have the second best player in Harden, the way he's playing. So I would assume that the team with the two best players is going to go ahead and win this series. But Tatum and, this team, the connectiveness of this team has always been something to marvel at. And it feels like they're a little off for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. I know Brown was talking about he needs to demand more touches and things like that. It just seems like it's not quite connected as it was a year ago.
It does not seem like it was the same level of connectedness last year, which is much different than the other conference. The Nuggets go up 3-2 over the Suns, and they are now not just the West Finals favorites, but the NBA Finals favorites.
Wow.
I asked you the same question about the Sixers. Do you agree that the Nuggets are the favorites to win it all?
Why not? I mean, I continue to watch the Nuggets, and I continue to try to talk myself out of the Nuggets as to reasons why they shouldn't be the favorites. But you look at the record, they were the best team in the West. They continue to live up to that, and I like the way that Jokic seemingly has taken some sort of, we joke about the Jordan, we take it personally. He seems like he took a lot of the commentary about him being a regular season player pretty personally, and he's playing lights out right now. I mean, you can't really ask for anything more from him, and I think I said this to you when we had Van on, but I think that they have the best fourth option in the playoffs in Michael Porter Jr., where you have a guy who's your fourth option, but he could also get you 40 points, 35 points, 30 points, whatever it may be in any given night, depending on the amount of shots he's given. That's how talented he is. And I feel like Michael Porter Jr. is the kind of guy that could swing a series, especially like in the Western Conference Finals, where if they match up against the Warriors, the Lakers, and who's guarding Jokic on those two teams? Obviously, you talk about Looney, but AD, that'll be a tough matchup. Do you have the fouls to deal with Jokic and also the playmaking of Jokic? This guy gets rebounds and then brings the ball up the court and starts to break himself. I mean, he is unique. And his passing is uncanny. I mean, it really is. It's one of one. It's very special.
I mean, that's the thing with Denver this year is they have a lot of that great depth where you talk about Porter as the best fourth option. Yeah. Jokic is the only All-NBA guy on that roster. Boston is the only team with All-NBA ballots being revealed that had 2 players make the 15 best guys for the 22-23 season. We saw SGA make first team for Oklahoma City this year. Jaylen Brown got second team, which means he's going to get his big payday.
$295 million, right?
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That is a heck of a lot of money for Jaylen.
He can get a house in Boston for that, I think.
I'm sure he can get multiple houses.
Yeah, right. Get a couple,
yeah. Dame made it for third team, with big numbers despite the losing this year. Tatum and Brown both make it. We'll see if they can actually capitalize on that as 2 great talents in the series against the Sixers. But Tate, with these All-NBA teams, what has stood out the most to you with the 15 guys who ended up making it, or the guys who didn't actually make it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumps out to me is, two guys on the first team aren't even in the playoffs, right? As we are in the postseason right now. That's pretty shocking. And that's not to take away from Luka's season. Obviously, a first-team level season. SGA was incredible. At times, he was a top 5 player in the NBA. Obviously, he is because he's first-team All-NBA. But still, you see that and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Curry being right there, nipping on their heels. I probably personally may have put Curry first team just because of the fact. But then you look at the games, right? And I think that's another facet of this that's really interesting. There's a new rule the CBA put in that you have to play 65 games to qualify for an All-NBA team. And there's guys that are on the All-NBA teams that wouldn't qualify that are pretty shocking. One of them being the quote-unquote best player in the world. I call him that. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 63 right?
63 games.
63 games. That's not 65, KOC.
No, it's not 65,
so he's not going to be an All-NBA player. LeBron James isn't going to be All-NBA. Steph Curry's not going to be All-NBA.
Lillard wouldn't have been either, or Jimmy Butler.
Right. So if we had those are 5 guys.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a whole team.
That's a whole team. We lost the whole team. So what does this look like moving forward? And then another wrinkle that's fascinating is next year it's positionless. So first team,
which I love, by the way.
I love it too.
I love that. I've wanted that for years.
I know you want that. I know you love that. But next year, right, we're going to have Jokic and Embiid and Giannis probably all in the first team. That's a nice team, but those are all bigs. You know what I mean? So maybe we have an all big team.
It'll be very interesting to me next year to see if anybody has, and I did this year, a different top 5 on their MVP ballot compared to a different 5 for the All NBA ballot.
Oh yeah,
there's subtle differences in what each award and recognition means.
Right.
So I'd just be curious to see if that ends up happening.
There's a lot of nuance in the NBA awards. That's what I've learned over the years. You know what I mean?
It's,
and shout out to Bill Simmons. He would always try to, break down the codes for me. I'm like, well, why can't this happen? He's like, here's why.
Let's talk about 2 pieces of news here to end this segment here, Tate. Coach K hired in the NBA as a special advisor. Just checking my notes here. Special advisor to NBA basketball operations. It's a new title, brand new, made up for Coach K, a longtime coach of Duke. You're a North Carolina guy.
Right.
Just to make that clear.
Yes.
What do you think is the significance of this role for Coach K heading to the NBA?
I think, in a league that is being marred by flopping and charges and dramatic acting, Mr. K is the man for the job. I think he comes in. I think he knows exactly how to handle this. In fact, I think he emboldens everybody around him to double down. This is great news for Marcus Smart. This is great news for Draymond Green. No, I'm kidding a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, it's cool for K.
A little bit kidding.
It's cool for K. I'm excited for him. We're going to see him. Apparently, he's going to the general managers meeting. He'll be at the NBA draft combine. So, if you thought that we were done with K after we saw him in the Final Four lose to North Carolina, don't worry. He's still around, so we'll see him at the NBA.
Well, I mean, good for Coach K. I guess he doesn't get too excited by golfing all day. And
he doesn't play golf, KOC. That's the thing. He needs a hobby, and turns out his hobby is hanging out with Adam Silver and rewarding flopping. So congratulations.
He's not watching Netflix. He's not watching FanDuel TV. He wants to work. He wants to be in the gym, in the office, with a ball in his hands.
Right.
So we'll see what he can actually end up doing. You mentioned the NBA Draft Combine. We get the lottery next week, the Combine to follow. Tons of college players, international players from around the world are going to be heading to Chicago to meet with teams, work out, and everything else. You host One Shining Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network. Big college basketball guy. Who is the college player that you think NBA fans need to know with everything that we're seeing in the playoffs right now? Like who's the guy that fans need to know?
Yeah, for better or worse, we all know Brandon Miller, right? So everyone knows Brandon Miller, the talent, and then the storyline behind that. But I think Anthony Black would be the one I circle. Coming out of Arkansas, I watched him at the Maui Invitational in person. I love the way that he's able to initiate offense. I mean, this guy's 6'7", legit, maybe 6'8" with the hair. Got a great handle. Has a lot of untapped potential, and also just with their team, they had so much talent with the Must Bus at Arkansas that I don't think that he was able to kind of become the full version of who Anthony Black can be because of the amount of shots that were needed by other guys. Obviously, they had Nick Smith, another guy who was going to be a lottery pick. So in general, I just think Anthony Black can really be a superstar in this league, and his ability to guard the 1, the 2, and the 3, and potentially the 4 at his size. that's special, right? That's a very unique quality. So if you don't know the name Anthony Black, I think that's one you would circle right there.
And that's so important, those types of qualities: connective passing, defensive versatility, big size as a playmaker, 6'7", 6'8".
Competitive too. I mean, the kid is super competitive.
Tough. He'll take a charge. I mean, like he'll be good at rating Coach K's NBA world as well, with some of the flopping, and embellishing.
Whipping that head back. You know what I mean? That's what you got to do, Cam. That's how you get the free throws. That's how it works.
You got to do it.
Yeah,
you
right.
Gotta do
he
it.
can do it.
You got to do it. I think with him, the other guy who comes to mind for me is somebody who kind of popped a little bit on social media this week, and that's Cam Whitmore out of Villanova.
Yeah,
superb athlete. You know, a high leaper. And the photo was posted by P3 of him just skying over, you know, everything that they have for the athletic testing equipment with the high jump. I'm not so sure he'll actually do the medical testing or the athletic testing at the combine as a projected top 10 pick. However, I don't think we really need to see those numbers to know that this guy is a freakish athlete.
And if you watched him at Villanova when he got back and got healthy, I watched his first game back, and, you know, the question was, they got this guy that's supposed to be a top 5 talent. Let's see what he looks like. Immediately, he hit a step back 3, KFC. Like, the first thing I saw him doing, I'm like, okay, you have my attention. Next possession down, guy gets a steal, goes down, gets a dunk. I'm like, okay, we checked all the boxes. Cam Whitmore, lottery-level talent. It didn't necessarily translate to winning just because Justin Moore was hurt. Villanova just had some issues. Kyle Neptune's first year, right? So it didn't really affect the bottom line. But if you watch Cam Whitmore, you could tell early on he really is the real deal. And there's a lot of teams that I think salivate over the idea of being able to plug and play him. And his shot will get better. And I think he could be a legit star, maybe second, third option, you know, on a real contending team in the NBA.
I'm looking forward to talking a lot more NBA draft with you over the coming weeks. Coming up on the next segment here, bringing on J. Kyle Mann, your co-host on One Shining Podcast.
My guy.
My co-host on the Ringers NBA Draft Show. We share the greatness of J. Kyle Mann. Now he's going to be on Beyond the Arc coming up next, talking about the NBA Draft Lottery.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc with the NBA Draft Lottery coming up next Tuesday. Here's my conversation with J. Kyle Mann from the Ringers NBA Draft Show, talking about the 3 teams with the most to gain on Draft Lottery night.
San Antonio, I feel like, is a team that has, if you look at their roster, you're kind of like, okay, I don't really know. Speaking of a map of the lottery on the team side of this, they're a team that, like, when you look at their roster, you're like, you don't really know what the map is, you know? And I feel like to go from that sort of void of form state that they're in, and to move into something that makes sense, that could set a roadmap, I feel like they are in a position to sort of gain some, if they can get one of those top 3 picks, I feel like they are in a position to sort of gain some certainty that they've been without. You know, I feel like they've been without that ever since, like, their veteran transition out of the franchise, where, you know, DeRozan sort of grew his game and moved on. LaMarcus Aldridge moved on. I feel like San Antonio, in their pursuit of, like, finding certainty, they have a lot to gain, whereas these other teams are sort of trying to bolster what they have, and I think that's a big thing.
That makes total sense. Like with Detroit, they have Cade. You know, Houston, they just drafted Jabari Smith. They got Jalen Green. Charlotte's got LaMelo Ball. Portland, you know, uncertain future with Damian Lillard, but they do have Dame. And even if they were to trade Dame, they'd get a haul in return. You know, the Magic are in good shape. The Pacers have Halliburton. And the Wizards, I mean, I think they have a lot to gain too in terms of what you're talking about there and having a roadmap. Utah is set up well. Chicago, I think they have a lot to gain as well. Oklahoma City, they're set up well. I'm with you, Kyle. I think the Spurs right now, they have some good young talent. You know, I like what they have. You know, I think Devin Vassell is one of the more underrated young players in the entire NBA right now. The progress that he has made each season of his career has been incredibly impressive. Like Jeremy Sohan, the guy like Keldon Johnson, they get a lot of talent on that team, but they don't have the guy that you're talking about here. And whether it's Wemby at number 1 or whether it's a Scoot Henderson or one of the Thompson twins, somebody like that could kind of define the character of this team into the years to come. The Spurs, I think they nail it, like in terms of the lens that you're looking at. You know, I think another lens to look through is, you know, some of these teams that are already set up well, that already have some good things going for them. How can they take the leap from very good positioning to, oh, we're suddenly in a position to compete for years to come? And Dallas is the obvious choice there, where you already have Luka, one of the best players in all of basketball. If they were to slide up to number one and you pair Wemby with Luka, that obviously goes without saying how magical that combination would be with those two guys. But even if they were to go up to number two or number three or number four, whether they use that pick to draft a young guy to pair with Luka or flip that pick in a trade, Dallas is a team, after tanking their way out of the play-in at the end of the season and getting the fine for doing it, if they were to move up, they're a team that suddenly could, I think, really propel themselves back into that upper class in the Western Conference that they have so quickly fallen out of.
Yeah, talking about the Wemby Luka thing, I just uncontrollably laugh if I even imagine.
Can you
that,
imagine, dude? Like, oh my goodness,
so ridiculous.
Like, what do you do?
I don't know, man, because they would fit together. That's the thing. Like, they really would fit together. That would be really an international. It'd be a better version of what we imagined he would be like with Porzingis.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I was telling you when I got on Tankathon earlier, the first spin that I did, Dallas rose to the top, and I was just sitting alone in my office, and I just like threw my hands in the air. I was like, "Oh my god!" just the thought of that is crazy. Yeah,
it's wild. Like, if that were to happen next week, like if they're pulling out the cards, and you see New Orleans 14, Toronto 13, Oklahoma City 12, Orlando 11, and then Utah comes up at 10, you'd be like, I would lose it if Dallas moved to the top four. Like, I can't imagine the reaction in the room when that could happen. It's just absolutely insane to think about.
Your guy Elon would have to get some more people on server duty that night, because I feel like that would break Twitter. I can't.
It would break Twitter. Yeah.
I can't. Yeah, that would be insane. I think you hit on something though that's interesting when we're talking about gaining and losing. I think with the Luka the thing, obviously you're supporting your star, and you're in a. Some of these teams are in more of a superstar. There's more like they're more desperate to attain the superstar talent thing. The Wizards are a funny one to me, just because, and I keep thinking about that Spencer Dinwiddie burn that he threw Kyle Kuzma's way. He was like, "You guys have 3 max players, but you didn't make the playoffs." And I was just thinking, the Wizards, for all of that, perceived. We talk about roadmaps. You've got these guys here, and it's almost like, is it real? Like, because if you have those guys, you shouldn't be in the position to think. Circling back to talk about the best available thing, I was looking at them and trying to decide who should just take best available, and I still think the Wizards should do that, despite them having 3 max players, like Spencer Dinwiddie said.
When it comes to best available, it isn't best available relative in the sense that, like, what's best available to you may have to do with your current roster. Like, what I'm saying is like there's no such thing as like a consensus list of best available for each respective team with their priorities and their philosophy and their current state of the roster. I think, I had a conversation with an executive years ago. Like, you saying that makes me think about it. When it comes to this, like, of course you draft for need, because need factors into who the best available players are. So I guess I'm just curious, like with Washington, related to them specifically, they currently have the 8th best odds. What is best available for them? Like, what do they need? Is it everything? Like, as in, like, every type of need applies to them? Whereas, like, for some teams, that's not the case. Like with Detroit, you can say they already have Ivy. They already have Cunningham. They already have ball handlers. Maybe you lean towards somebody who complements them as the best available talent for Detroit. Whereas with Washington, it's like, whatever we can get, baby, like, we'll take it.
Well, I just think that, like, the best available versus it all just kind of comes down to what you have nailed down to, what you're committed to. Because if you do draft best available, I mean, there are some things that enter into it. You can get into a situation where maybe, let's see, I had this written down because I was thinking about this. If the main thing that you want to avoid is dissonance at a position, because that creates situations where maybe the player doesn't play, which creates a chain reaction of maybe you have a young player that's not getting to play. Maybe they get unhappy. Maybe it makes an older player unhappy that the player's there. Like, it just creates a lot of questions that maybe you had the stomach to deal with those. Maybe you don't. I mean, you look at the Warriors. I don't know that it's necessarily it wasn't a dissonant thing. It was more of a, they deemed Jonathan Kuminga the highest upside pick at that spot, and he just wasn't ready to play in their system. Maybe it was a bad fit. Ultimately, they misread the situation. I just think, specifically if we're talking about the Wizards, I don't see any of those players and think like, I'm so married to the situation we have here. Like, I'm so certain. I have such a level of certainty about what we have here that I'm willing to pass on somebody for the reason of dissonance. Like, I don't think I would be thinking like that if I were them. I would just be trying to take the highest talent available, whether that fit with what I have or not. Like, I wouldn't be worried about the issues that it could create.
Thank you for watching Beyond the Arc on FanDuel TV. We'll be back next Tuesday talking about the NBA playoffs. The conference finals are starting, and the NBA draft lottery will be coming up again too.